Hey, this is Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Today we're going to pick up with Unit 14, Lesson Number 2, the U.S. and Globalization. Now we've talked a little bit about the globalization of the United States of America and how technology kind of influenced it a little bit. But what we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper and try to give you some better understanding is why the United States of America and the rest of the world will be plunged into becoming a more global society where things are interconnected more. We'll start by looking at our 2-unit focus questions for this particular unit. We won't, of course, answer these questions right now, but we will at the conclusion of the unit. How has globalization affected the development of a modern America? And number 2, how has grievance affected the American political landscape? Now, when we're looking at the United States of America and the rest of the world, we're going to find that it's going to be because of the genius of a few tech gurus that we're going to be plunged into this new era of technology and interconnectedness. But we're going to start by looking at vocabulary first. Do what we always ask you to do is take out your journals, of course, and write down these terms. And then as they come up in the lesson, we'll try to address as many of them as we can. All right, it says, what impact did the computer have on the internet and on creating global society? That'll be our lesson focus question. So as we go through this particular lesson, this is what we want you to concentrate on. We want to look at the impact of the computer. We're going to start with our journal topic. So take out your journals, write down the question, answer it, and then we'll try to come back and address it on the other side. It says, how has the internet impacted global society? Go ahead and write your answers now. Well, when you think about the computer or the internet and how has it affected global society, the one thing that we can tell you and then make it a very, very simple answer for you, it has made everything a lot closer and interconnected. In other words, you can have conversations, of course, across the world instantaneously. You can ship products, by using technology, technology-based tools. So if there is some type of some type of document you want to share, it can go there instantaneously. So when we're looking at the impact on global society, what we can tell you is it causes interconnectedness. All right, we're going to start by looking at computer technology. The creation of the computer for consumer use was created through the evolution of the microprocessor technology with Robert Noyce, who created Intel, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, of course, for Apple, and Bill Gates, of course, for Microsoft. Their efforts led to satellite and cable TV, digital music players, digital cameras, cell phones, PCs, digital televisions, and video and music recorders. So a lot of those wonderful pieces of technology that is at our fingertips now, we have these men, of course, to thank for it. The internet, which started as a military application, became accessible to civilians because of advances in personal computing. By 2007, more than 1 billion people were actively using the internet daily to access information from databases throughout the world. The internet connected people and opened new business opportunities with a global economy and gave rise to social media platforms like MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, etc., Instagram. So when you think about it, and we think about the impact that technology has had on the rest of the world, it's gotten everything a lot closer, a lot more interconnected, and a lot faster, of course, in terms of communication. Now, when we look at the World Wide Web, there's a man by the name of Tim Berners-Lee, who was a British citizen that comes up with this idea of how to give us, access, to the internet, and we'll talk about him briefly in a few moments. Here is Robert Noyce on the left and Gordon Moore on the right. They are responsible for Intel and the creators of microprocessor technology. Here we have Bill Gates, of course, the creator of Microsoft and Windows. Here you have Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, of course, the Apple iPhone 1, 2 through 196, I think. And then you have, of course, Tim Berners-Lee, who's responsible for inventing the World Wide Web. And social media platforms, of course, good, bad, or ugly, they're around because of these advances in technology. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, and then, of course, when you look at the map of social media platforms, if you look at these areas that are colored, and everything that's colored, other than something that's gray, has access to some social media platform. And there aren't very many places left on earth where social media, of course, can't get to you. Globalization. By the 1990s, the economies of nations became more interconnected because the business opportunities could be accessed through telecommunication networks. People in the United States could conduct business anywhere in the world instantaneously, and that interconnectedness would be called globalization. Regional trading blocs like NAFTA, the European Union, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation were created to encourage trade among members by lowering trade barriers like tariffs and creating common currency like the euro in the European Union. And the World Trade Organization was formed in 1995, and its purpose was to facilitate trade among 120 nations, further promoting globalization. And as we said, what it did, of course, is it made things more instantaneous when it came to conducting business, when it came to communication, and when it just came to, of course, being socially connected with other people. The internet and this technology that we've created that gives us globalization makes everything in the rest of the world closer now. Here is a picture of NAFTA, of course. NAFTA was a trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada that started during the George H.W. Bush administration and was finalized during the Clinton administration. Then you have the European Union over here on the right. And of course, it was a European nations that got together, of course. And what they did, of course, is they relaxed trade barriers between the nations and made travel between the nations a lot easier. All right, technology pioneers. What we want you to do at this time, we'll pause and complete an activity on the tech pioneers that made globalization possible. What we'll do is we'll put this worksheet up here, give you a few minutes, of course, to copy it, and then give you a few minutes, of course, to go through and get your answers to it. And after that, we'll come back and give a brief explanation of what some of those answers very well could have been. So at this time, go ahead and copy this. And now we'll give you some time, of course, to go through and get your answers. All right, you should have had enough time that you were able to go through, of course, and look at that worksheet. And what we'll do now is give you a brief explanation of what some of those answers should have been. When you look at it, we're looking at these tech geniuses here. We have Steve Jobs, D, and it says created the iPhone technology. Of course, you could have said the same thing by Steve Wozniak. When you look at number 2, Steve Wozniak, we said C, the tech genius behind Apple 1 and 2. We have Bill Gates, E, and they created the first personal computer with graphical interface. And then, of course, we look at 4, Tim Berners-Lee, the father of the World Wide Web. Gordon Moore would be F, created the chip technology we double every 2 years. And then we have Robert Noyce, number 6, and the answer would be B, created the Intel 4004 and microprocessing. So when you look at these tech geniuses, they are the ones that are singularly responsible, of course, for making the world more interconnected and allowing globalization, of course, to take place. Down at the bottom, we have a few true and false questions. The only one that was false was number 1. It says Steve Jobs co-designed the Apple II, which was the first personal computer and featured a graphical user interface, the GUI. And that, of course, was the only one that was not a true statement. What we hope you were able to do is to get some kind of insight in terms of what these tech geniuses did, of course, to make the world more interconnected. And it's because of their influence that has influenced every aspect of American society, even in looking at American politics. And that's going to become problematic for some people as we go forward. All right, let's look at global environmentalism. Globalization also increased the awareness of nations had regarding the environment. Nations rallied around the issue of the destruction of the ozone layer in the 1980s. That movement led to the reduction in the use of chlorofluorocarbons around the world. The Kyoto Protocols of 1997 was another global effort to address an environmental issue called global warming. The United States didn't sign the protocol, though, and Democrats and Clinton supported it. But Clinton didn't submit it to the Republican-controlled Congress because he knew they wouldn't ratify it. In 2000, Republican George W. Bush withdrew the United States of America from the Kyoto Protocols altogether. So what we find is that there is some appetite in the United States of America, of course, to institute programs and initiatives, of course, to decrease the amount of pollution and the destruction, of course, in the global environment. The United States of America, unfortunately, in the minds of some people in the early 2000s and the early 1990s, didn't do a whole lot, of course, to lead that particular effort, especially with our failure to join the Kyoto Protocols. All right, let's look at the lesson focus questions for lesson number 2. What impact did the computer and the internet have on creating a global society? Well, we talked about it. It's been pretty extensive. And when you think about it, it revolutionized communication, commerce, and information sharing and created a global society. Instant connectivity was created and enabled global collaboration to share ideas and access information. The world sped up, became smaller, and knowledge was more democratized. Anyone could access it. Businesses intentionally were more interconnected, and it gave rise to social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, etc. So when you look at globalization of the United States of America, we primarily get that because of the tech improvements that started in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we're going to find that those influences, of course, influence every part of American society today, even America's politics. All right, we hope you got some insights in terms of why globalization took root, of course, here in the United States of America and the rest of the world. But remember what we always say, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and do your own research, draw your own conclusion. And with that, this is Coach Annis from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History. We'll see you next time.